to talk to you today about grace and what it means. What is grace? What does it mean to me as a Christian? And if I'm saved by grace and not by works, then it helps me to understand just what is this grace. And I had always heard that grace is defined as God's unearned, unmerited favor. Um, but that's not that helpful to me personally. And it's actually it's part of what grace is defined as, but actually the Bible, Jesus himself gives us a very good definition, an exact definition of exactly what grace is. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, talking to Paul, this is Paul writing, and he said, "And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." So grace is defined as his strength in my weakness, his ability in my inability, his victory in my defeat, his life in my death. So that means that healing is a grace. That means that deliverance is a grace, that freedom from sin is a grace. These are all graces, the abilities of God that he gives to each one of us freely. And Peter calls it in 1 Peter 4:10. Peter says, "As each one has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. If anyone speaks, let him speak as the oracles of God. If anyone ministers, let him do it as with the ability which God supplies, that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom belong the glory and the dominion forever and ever." So Peter says that God's grace is manifold or many faceted, and that we minister to one another by that manifold grace. There's a grace for speaking. There's a grace for service. There's a grace to be a pastor. There's a grace. All of those things are God's ability, not ours. And so I think of in Romans 12, where Paul says, 12, 1 through 8, "I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." Now, that word transformed in the Greek is metamorpho. It's where we get our word metamorphosis. It's what a caterpillar goes through when he goes from being a caterpillar into the chrysalis or into his cocoon to become a butterfly. The caterpillar has the image. When we're born again, we receive the image of Christ in us. We have his spiritual DNA inside of us. So the caterpillar has the image of the butterfly in him. The image of the butterfly, the hope of glory, you could say. So, but he's still a butterfly. I mean, he's still a caterpillar. He can't fly. And when we're born again and first saved, we're like caterpillars. We have that image inside of us, that image of Christ, but we're not transformed yet. So when Paul in Romans 12 says, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind," that means that it's a process, that it's a metamorphosis. And part of what the caterpillar has to do is die. The caterpillar dies when he goes into the cocoon. He actually dissolves, liquefies, and his inside's basically rearranged and he comes out a butterfly. But while he's a caterpillar, and if he's on one leaf and he wants to get to another leaf, he has no other way but by the caterpillar way. Even though in him is the image to be able to fly, he still hasn't been transformed yet. And that's an important thing for us to understand, that as we present ourselves to God through prayer and fellowship, through worship, through his word, and spending time with him, that he transforms us and he does the work within us. That's grace. And the caterpillar could go to flight school. He could go to butterfly school. He could have 10 degrees on his wall from about being a butterfly and about flying. But if he jumps off the branch, all he's going to do is splat on the ground. It's not until he dies and goes through that process of transformation that he can fly. And sometimes I find myself trying to do things in my own strength, and I'm trying to serve God like a caterpillar instead of allowing God to transform me and to change me, and allow Christ in me to come out. And Paul says in Philippians 3, this is what Paul is talking about. In Philippians 3, 4 through 8, he says, though I might have confidence in the flesh, if anyone else thinks that he may have confidence in the flesh, I more so. Circumcised the 8th day, of the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of the Hebrews, concerning the law, a Pharisee, concerning zeal, persecuting the church, concerning righteousness which is in the law, blameless. But those things that were gained to me, these I have counted loss for Christ. Yet indeed I also count all things loss for the excellence of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things, and count them as rubbish, that I may gain Christ. Paul is saying that, when I got saved, I was a doctor of the doctors, a theologian of theologians, world class. I knew the Bible better than anybody else on the whole entire planet. And from the tribe, an Israelite, top line credentials, but all that stuff meant nothing because I was still a caterpillar. It wasn't until I died to those things and allowed the grace of God to come to me, and to work through me and work out from me, that I could become transformed. But it was only as I presented my body, myself, as a living sacrifice unto God, holy and acceptable, which means if I don't present it to him holy, then it's not acceptable. And how do I present that to him holy? That's always for me the question. How do I know I'm supposed to do this stuff, but how do I do this stuff? And it's by simply just going to him every day, spending time with him on a daily basis. Your devotionals and your prayer time and your worship time, those aren't just boxes that we need to tick. Those are things that we do to build a relationship with the Father, because he wants to know you personally and intimately. And he wants to bring the image of Christ in us out, so that we are transformed into the image of Jesus Christ, his dear Son. And so when the world sees us, it sees Christ in us. But that can only happen as we allow ourselves to go into the cocoon, as it were, and go from being caterpillars to butterflies. And only God can do that in us. And so my prayer for you and for me this day is just simply that we learn, and that I learn, how to on a daily basis, present myself unto God and allow him to transform and renew my mind. Thank you very much.